Every denial carries a truth hidden between the lines, and when a nation says no, sometimes it is really saying not yet. Pakistan's rejection of the J-35 stealth jet deal is not a final word. It is a strategic pause, a carefully crafted message to its people, its rivals, and the world. The public denial versus the private reality of Pakistan's potential J-35 stealth jet deal is where this entire debate begins to unravel. When a nation is truly not interested in a defense acquisition, it usually ignores rumors or issues, a bland dismissal, and moves on. Yet, Pakistan's denial has been strong, deliberate, and repeated, which sparks suspicion. It suggests that the matter is not as clear-cut as the government wants the public and the world to believe. Pakistan has a long history of denying military collaborations until the moment they are too obvious to hide, from its early nuclear program to defense partnerships that were quietly pursued until they reached maturity. In this case, the outright rejection of the J-35 stealth jet rumors may be more about controlling the narrative than speaking the truth. It shields Pakistan from scrutiny at a time when its economic struggles and political instability are under global watch. If officials were to confirm even exploratory talks with Beijing over advanced stealth fighters, it could ignite a firestorm of criticism about misplaced priorities and reckless spending while the country is negotiating bailouts with international financial institutions. Denying the deal allows the leadership to maintain an image of restraint and responsibility while still keeping the possibility alive behind closed doors. Furthermore, the very intensity of the denial raises eyebrows. If the matter was truly baseless, why dignify it with such strong statements? It is often said in international relations that denials can speak louder than confirmations, because they expose the very anxiety leaders feel about the perception of their choices. By publicly rejecting the J-35 discussion, Pakistan simultaneously keeps China reassured in private channels while avoiding open confrontation with the United States and its allies, who would interpret such a purchase as a clear pivot into Beijing's defense orbit. The public denial, therefore, is not the end of the story, but the first clue that the private reality may be far more complex, where negotiations, calculations, and long-term planning are happening behind carefully closed doors. Pakistan's balancing act between China and the West is one of the most critical dimensions to understanding why the denial of the J-35 stealth jet deal carries so much weight. The country has historically been pulled between two poles of influence: Beijing, which provides military technology, diplomatic cover, and economic investment, and Washington, which has long acted as both an ally and a critic, supplying aid but also imposing sanctions when Islamabad drifted too close to perceived adversaries. The J-35 deal, if confirmed, would send a powerful signal that Pakistan is deepening its military dependency on China at the expense of its relationship with the United States and its Western allies. This is precisely why a denial was strategically necessary. The West has already grown wary of China's expanding defense industry, particularly stealth capabilities that could challenge US and NATO air dominance in regions like the Indo-Pacific. If Pakistan openly embraced Beijing's fifth-generation fighter, it would risk diplomatic backlash, restricted access to Western financial institutions, and further isolation at a time when it can least afford it. At the same time, Pakistan cannot afford to distance itself from China, given that Beijing remains its most reliable defense partner, the supplier of critical technologies, and the architect of massive infrastructure projects through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. This tightrope act forces Pakistan to publicly reject the deal to calm Western anxieties while quietly nurturing defense ties with China behind closed doors. The denial itself is a calculated signal to Washington that Islamabad still wants to keep its options open and is not ready to throw itself entirely into Beijing's orbit. Yet this strategy comes at a cost, as it reveals how vulnerable Pakistan is to external pressures and how much of its sovereignty in defense decisions is constrained by the fear of international reactions. The balancing act is not about whether Pakistan wants the J-35, but about when and how it can obtain it without alienating one side while fully embracing the other. A diplomatic game that makes denial a tool of survival in an increasingly polarized world. Pakistan's economic strain and its need to manage its image play a defining role in why the J-35 stealth jet deal is being denied so strongly. At a time when the country is grappling with crippling debt, currency devaluation, and repeated trips to the International Monetary Fund for bailouts, any announcement of a multi-billion-dollar purchase of cutting-edge stealth aircraft would be politically disastrous both domestically and internationally. Ordinary citizens are already burdened with inflation, rising costs of fuel and electricity, and a shrinking job market, so the optics of investing in futuristic fighter jets while people struggle to afford food would spark outrage. International lenders and watchdogs, meanwhile, would see such a purchase as evidence of misplaced priorities, questioning Pakistan's seriousness about economic reforms and stability. By denying the deal, the government avoids these criticisms and portrays itself as a responsible actor focused on fiscal discipline. Yet this denial does not mean the idea of acquiring such jets is off the table. It simply reflects the timing problem. Pakistan may very well be interested in the J-35 but cannot afford to admit it, while its economic vulnerabilities are so exposed to the world. The denial, therefore, acts as an economic shield, buying time until conditions improve or until more creative financing arrangements can be made with China, which has historically extended loans and flexible payment structures to secure long-term defense partnerships. Beyond the financial aspect, image management is equally important. Pakistan's leadership is under constant pressure to show that it prioritizes the needs of its people over costly military ambitions, even though defense spending has always been central to its strategic identity. By rejecting the J-35 deal in public, officials can deflect accusations of extravagance and maintain credibility at home, while still signaling to their military establishment that modernization remains a priority. It is a delicate balancing act of optics, where denial becomes a form of public relations management, reassuring both domestic audiences and international creditors that Pakistan is not being reckless, even if behind the curtain it is still carefully exploring advanced military options. Strategic secrecy and the pattern of military modernization in Pakistan explain why the denial of the J-35 stealth jet deal may be less about truth and more about concealment. Modern defense acquisitions are rarely conducted in the open, especially when they involve next-generation technologies that can shift the balance of power in a volatile region. Pakistan has a long record of keeping its most sensitive military projects hidden until they are operational or too large to disguise. The nuclear program was developed under a veil of secrecy, denied repeatedly until the tests in 1998 made it undeniable. The same approach has been seen with missile developments and sensitive defense collaborations with China, where rumors circulated for years before official acknowledgements came. In the case of the J-35, a public denial serves as a smokescreen, allowing quiet negotiations, trials, or even limited collaboration to continue without external interference. This secrecy is not just for diplomatic convenience but for security purposes as well. If Pakistan were to openly admit it was in talks for stealth aircraft, adversaries like India would immediately begin recalibrating their own strategies, possibly accelerating purchases from the West or deepening cooperation with allies such as France, Russia, or the United States. By keeping quiet, Pakistan preserves the element of surprise, forcing its rivals to speculate rather than prepare. In military terms, ambiguity is a weapon in itself. Beyond rivalry, secrecy also protects the technical and logistical aspects of procurement. Developing or acquiring stealth technology requires testing, adaptation to local conditions, pilot training, and integration into existing air defense systems. If all of this were public knowledge, it would give adversaries insight into Pakistan's timeline and vulnerabilities during the transition phase. Denial, therefore, acts as a shield, allowing Pakistan to modernize at its own pace without being rushed or exposed. This strategy also aligns with China's typical method of introducing new systems quietly, testing them in limited numbers before wider deployment. In this way, Pakistan's public rejection of the J-35 deal could be part of a larger coordinated effort with Beijing to keep opponents guessing while still advancing toward the long-term goal of integrating fifth-generation fighters into its arsenal. The regional power dynamics with India provide one of the clearest reasons why Pakistan has chosen to deny the J-35 stealth jet deal, at least in public. South Asia remains one of the most militarized regions in the world, and the relationship between Pakistan and India has always been defined by competition, mistrust, and the pursuit of strategic advantage. If Pakistan were to openly confirm that it was pursuing advanced fifth-generation stealth fighters from China, it would immediately provoke a strong reaction from New Delhi. India would likely use such a move as justification to accelerate its own military modernization, seeking more advanced aircraft from partners like the United States, France, or Russia, and possibly securing weapons that are not even on the negotiation table yet. This would spark an arms race that Pakistan is not in a position to sustain, given its economic constraints, but one that India, with its larger economy and greater access to Western markets, could more comfortably afford. Denying the deal, therefore, is not simply about hiding intentions, but about managing escalation in a volatile neighborhood. Ambiguity becomes a tool of strategy because it keeps India uncertain. Without official confirmation, Indian planners are forced to speculate about whether Pakistan is seriously considering the J-35 or if it is merely political theatre. This uncertainty can slow India's decision-making, creating room for Pakistan to quietly strengthen its capabilities without triggering immediate countermeasures. At the same time, denial helps Pakistan avoid international headlines that would paint the region as entering yet another dangerous arms race, which could attract unwanted intervention or diplomatic pressure from global powers who would prefer to keep South Asia stable. The denial also gives Pakistan breathing space to frame its eventual acquisition of advanced jets, if it happens, not as a reckless escalation, but as a delayed and defensive necessity in response to India's actions. In essence, by refusing to acknowledge any J-35 deal, Pakistan is buying time, avoiding confrontation, and exploiting the power of ambiguity to keep its rivals second-guessing, while carefully calculating how and when to reveal its true military modernization plans. The denial of the J-35 stealth jet deal ultimately reflects not rejection, but Pakistan's long-term strategy, which is rooted in preserving flexibility, leveraging ambiguity, and carefully navigating global power politics. Pakistan knows it cannot afford to make decisions that tie it completely to one camp, whether that be China or the West, because its survival has always depended on balancing multiple alliances at once. By publicly rejecting reports of the J-35, Islamabad keeps its options open, signaling to the West that it is not closing the door to cooperation, while also signaling to Beijing that the partnership remains intact, only less visible for now. This dual messaging is not inconsistency, but strategy. It gives Pakistan maneuverability in a world where choosing one side outright could lead to isolation, sanctions, or being used as a pawn in a much bigger geopolitical struggle between superpowers. What this really means is that Pakistan is not just denying a deal, but crafting an image of independence, showing it will not be pressured into revealing all its moves or committing prematurely. The future of Pakistan's defense strategy lies in gradual modernization, incremental upgrades, and selective partnerships that maximize benefits without exposing the country to backlash. The denial, therefore, should not be mistaken for weakness, but understood as a deliberate tactic to control timing and perception. Pakistan is aware that it needs advanced technology to keep pace with regional and global threats, yet it also knows that such acquisitions cannot be rushed or flaunted. What matters most is not the immediate confirmation of a stealth jet deal, but the signal that Pakistan intends to remain unpredictable, adaptable, and strategically cautious. The real meaning behind the denial is that Pakistan is not saying no forever, but not yet, buying itself the room to act when conditions are favorable and when the consequences of such a move can be absorbed without destabilizing its economy, its diplomacy, or its fragile security environment. By keeping the world guessing, Pakistan secures for itself a stronger position in negotiations, maintains leverage with allies and rivals alike, and demonstrates that in modern geopolitics, silence and denial can be as powerful as open declarations. At the heart of this debate lies not the question of whether Pakistan will one day pursue fifth-generation stealth fighters, but how it chooses to manage the perception of its choices in a world where every move is scrutinized. The denial is not weakness, nor is it submission. It is strategy, pure and simple. It is about calming anxieties at home, avoiding diplomatic confrontations abroad, keeping rivals guessing, and maintaining leverage in an increasingly polarized global order. By denying the J-35 deal, Pakistan signals that it will not be forced into premature admissions, nor will it allow its defense trajectory to be dictated by external pressure. The real meaning is that Pakistan is playing the long game, balancing ambition with caution, secrecy with necessity, and power with pragmatism. In the end, the denial is not the conclusion. It is the prologue to a story still unfolding, one that will define the future of Pakistan's military identity and its place in a rapidly changing world.